Greetings everyone and welcome. I'm your host Captain Rye, and in today's video we have Dear Mr. Frodo playing in the Tier 10 US Light Cruiser Wooster here in World of Warships. Now, to start off the battle, it is a Tier 10 maximum battle, and it is Fire Islands and Domination Mode. Now, I'd also like to point out here at the beginning of the battle that Mr. Frodo has got the really gorgeous Shark Don't Tread on Me permanent camo for this ship. This, of all of the fantasy camos that are available for your various warships in game, is by far my favorite. So we get to see a game with my favorite camo in what is a very effective light cruiser. Now, there are obviously carriers in-game here. The enemy team starts off with a destroyer advantage. They are starting off with 3 destroyers to Mr. Frodo's 2. Mr. Frodo's team also has 2 div mates here, and if you know how the div system works, you will know that it has a potential to create some very powerful combinations. And if you're playing well and playing right and communicating well, you can really do some amazing things in a div. Now, Harugumo spotted out at a distance here. Dear Mr. Frodo is going to start firing at him, but notice he's firing armor piercing and not high explosive. Now, I'm not entirely sure about this decision here. You can see this armor piercing actually ricocheting off the Harugumo, and it takes him a while before he switches over to the high explosive. Now, the Harugumo is going to have to engage a Harborovsk. Harborovsk's going to try and launch torpedoes, but the Harugumo, a little bit too quick there, gets behind the island there. The Harborovsk's still spotting them, taking big hits from various other enemy vessels on the enemy team. Now, the armor piercing, as I mentioned, not the best to use here, especially not against a Harugumo early on there. He probably had the armor piercing loaded just as what was the last loaded shot at the end of the last battle, or possibly switched over at the beginning thinking he would probably run into something like a light cruiser early on. The armor piercing on the 6-inch isn't bad for dealing with destroyers, but you are going to run into those bounces, and you are going to run into a lot of shots that just don't do as much damage. You're not going to knock out modules the same way you do with the high explosive. The high explosive in this ship, incredibly effective. 6-inch high explosive tears through destroyers like nobody's business. Speaking of destroyers, there is the enemy Benson making his push into A, and the enemy Zhao pushing all the way around here. Now, I'm not sure the Zhao's intentions, but he's going to make a violent, fatal mistake here as he comes out broadside to a Wooster at less than 7 kilometers. Look at the Citadels just racking up there. Double Citadel, lots of damage, lots of regular penetration. Mr. Frodo doesn't get the kill on that ship, though. A little bit disappointing there, but does basically effectively cause most of the damage. Enemy team takes an early destroyer advantage here. They've killed one of Mr. Frodo's destroyers on his team. They have killed a Tier 10 heavy cruiser, the Zhao, a very dangerous and problematic cruiser, but as I always say, the team that gets the destroyer advantage early on really does go on to have a better game. Now, arguably, looking at this Benson, they didn't really have a destroyer advantage on the enemy team because this Benson is completely naked and probably completely stock. Here's what I'm talking about with that high explosive going out, those 6-inch high explosive rounds. Yes, they take a long time to get out there, and if you're shooting at any enemy ship greater than 10 kilometers, especially if it's small like a destroyer, you're going to have a really hard time hitting them if they're maneuvering. But when you do hit them, you cause a lot of damage. Speaking of maneuvering and having a hard time hitting it, looks like maybe the Harugumo firing shots off, having a hard time hitting there. Friendly Tirpitz is unfortunately got himself overextended. Benson is going to take advantage of that, and the Conqueror on the enemy team there. Tirpitz, poor sweet dumb Tirpitz, gonna get himself probably dead very short order, but that is going to leave that Benson exposed just a little bit longer, and there is Mr. Frodo's first kill in the game, taking out that enemy destroyer. So now the teams are fairly equal on number of ships, although the enemy team does have a points advantage, killing a battleship over a cruiser. But they also have a points advantage in the form that they've managed to capture the C cap point, and they're currently capturing B, and there's nobody at B to contest or to even spot. Enemy Conqueror firing armor piercing. That's unusual of a Conqueror player, but in this particular case, probably very, very useful. This American light cruiser not going to weather armor piercing shots very well. If he was in a Des Moines, maybe he was bow on an angle, but not broadside on. No sirree. We know exactly what armor-piercing rounds will do to one of these ships. We've seen plenty of my videos. Enemy Conqueror gets taken out of the game there, so that's going to give Frodo's team a slight advantage points-wise and numerically, but the enemy team's going to take the B cap point, so now they're gaining points at double the rate, while Mr. Frodo's team isn't even capping. Well, they're capping, but they don't have a cap, so they're not gaining points, and that's going to give the enemy team that points lead here very, very shortly. And as a result of them having 2 caps, they're going to be able to maintain and extend that lead, even if they start losing more ships. Now, Mr. Frodo has lost a bit of his health. He does have his heals available, and he could use them anytime he pleases. But as we can see there, that little indicator icon flashing 1 every now and again, it doesn't appear that anybody is currently targeting him. You'll notice there what he's doing here, he's doing this little map edge trick. If you press M, double click it quickly enough, you can usually get a slightly higher, almost scout spotter aircraft available view without having one. But of course, if you don't press it quickly enough, you go into map mode and you drop back down. Now, he was shooting at the enemy Bismarck, or the enemy Tirpitz that was in that cap there, turning away. Changed his focus of fire to the Montana. This Montana's got a lot of health. He is well within range here. So Mr. Frodo does need to be careful. It does look like the Montana's got his guns pointed this direction, but he isn't actively aiming at him at this point. So the Montana, yep, is firing at somebody else, and so there is going to be a fire set on that Montana. So far, the battle isn't even 10 minutes old, and Mr. Frodo has done 90,000 damage. Montana puts the fire out now, so 20 seconds, 25 seconds, and that Montana, any more hits that land that set fires, those fires are going to burn. If you're in a battleship, pro tip, and you're taking a lot of fire from like a Wooster, like this, don't spam that R key and put those fires out right away unless you stop taking that fire or you've dropped off detectability, because the odds are the enemy cruiser is just going to keep spamming you until they set another fire. Doesn't look like any fires were additionally set, so that Montana manages to get away with it. Unfortunately, Mr. Frodo's team is having a little bit of a hard time of it right now, as they've lost yet another battleship. So the enemy team up 200 points here, plus, again, with the cap advantage, they are gaining points at an even quicker rate. More importantly, looking at the minimap situation, all of his team is currently clustered over at the A cap point. The rest of the enemy team has completely abandoned the C cap point, and all they have to do, come in and protect B. They don't even need to push at B. They just need to defend against Mr. Frodo's team from taking the B cap point. Mr. Frodo taking some fire in there from the Salem. The Salem's rate of fire very, very high indeed. It is a Demonis cruiser. It is a heavy cruiser, so those are 8-inch shots, and that's going to be every 6 seconds, instead of, as we can see here, about every 3.5 seconds. Does manage to set a couple of fires. That isn't going to last long, as this cruiser is undoubtedly going to put those out, and he does there. There's the enemy Baltimore. The enemy Baltimore is just kind of sitting out in the open there. He is also going to fire high explosive. Not sure I would do this if I was in either of those cruisers. I would probably, honestly, be spamming armor piercing just in case, the off chance that you manage to land some armor piercing broadside shots on one of these cruisers. You're going to do a lot of damage, and it's not going to be recoverable. Enemy team really pushing that points victory here. Mr. Frodo's pushing up. He's in a position where he's got aircraft spotting for him from the friendly carrier. The friendly carrier knows that he can use Mr. Frodo's cruiser as an anti-aircraft platform to basically end the enemy CV's reign of terror on his own planes with any luck. But Mr. Frodo does have the problem that he's got a lot of very, very angry guns around him. A lot of heavy cruisers back over here that could cause him some problem. Light cruisers as well. His team still not coordinating, not pushing the B cap point like they need to be pushing. And there's a lot on the enemy team here. Well, they don't have a lot of health left. They're half health or less. The carrier is doing a very good job here, whittling people down and keeping them spotted. But they need to focus fire. Enemy Salem manages to pull a Notzer, beaches himself, and that is going to basically be that guy's death. He's got to back off the rocks, even though he's not broadside to anything that can shoot at him right now. He is basically slowly moving, allowing these very long hang time 6-inch high explosive shells to find their mark. But it looks like somebody is targeting, well, briefly was targeting, and you can see they're not doing a lot of damage each salvo, but there's a lot of salvos going out there. So the question is this Salem going to get behind something where Mr. Frodo can no longer rain the Hellfire down upon him? There's a fire set, speaking of Hellfire, and now it's going to be difficult for him to spot, but you can see he was being targeted there, no longer by that Salem. The Salem does get shots off. They do land. They do set a fire. But Mr. Frodo's got other problems right now. He's got an enemy Baltimore who's found his man pants, gotten his brave pills, and he is coming fast and hard around here. Mr. Frodo didn't manage to secure the kill on that Salem, but the Salem is dead as far as I can tell. So that's good. That's a very dangerous top-tier cruiser that would be a problem. Enemy Kiev also finds his man pants, is going to start coming. Now, he's actually close enough. He's being spotted by the harbor offs because the guy was firing at him. But, as we can see, Dear Mr. Frodo's got hydroacoustic and radar. He doesn't need it. He's not using it. There's the Kiev, comes around. The first shots, he manages to dunk him into the island. Doesn't manage to hit him. But look at this. The Kiev dumps his shots. And thanks to the speed of this cruiser, and probably the engine module, I'm guessing that Mr. Frodo has installed, Mr. Frodo manages to dodge all of the Kiev's torpedoes. Now, if the Kiev unfortunately had, maybe changed his spread a little bit, he probably would have managed to land a good number of hits and likely killed Mr. Frodo outright. But look at the situation here. Mr. Frodo's team has managed to pull the game back massively in a very short period of time. They've taken a huge ship's advantage and narrowed it down to just 4 enemy ships. An enemy destroyer, an enemy carrier, and 2 enemy battleships. The enemy team's still up on points. They're still in the lead right now, and that's only and solely because they have 2 of the caps. Mr. Frodo's team needs to, now that they have coordinated and managed to take out all of these half-health, low-health enemy vessels, needs to coordinate and actually start getting in and taking the caps. So Mr. Frodo getting shots off here. Here is an enemy British battleship using, of course, high explosive. If he had the armor-piercing load, Mr. Frodo probably would have had a very, very bad time there. I do want to apologize. There seems to be a bit of a bug here. I don't know if this was happening to Mr. Frodo in the game, but when he zoomed in, you'll notice that the camera keeps shifting between the various gun turrets. Kind of annoying. I'm really not sure what's going on there. If he's doing that or if it's doing that automatically. And if it's doing that automatically, that is really, truly annoying. Enemy team now down to just 2 ships, but again, they still hold 2 of the caps. The good news is the carrier is unlikely to be capping. The bad news is they still have an enemy destroyer hanging around somewhere. Although, if the Harbor Offs finds it, assuming the Harbor Off stays alive against the enemy carrier strike, that enemy destroyer is probably not going to have the best time against the Harbor Offs. Although, doesn't have a lot of health left, so if he does run into that enemy destroyer and it's the Harugumo, that Harugumo will probably win at this point. Mr. Frodo, with his friendly div mate, and it is the Harugumo that's alive, pushing into the B cap point. They are finally going to take it. They're going to prevent the enemy team from continuing to gain the cap advantage here. This is going to set their lead further out. Enemy CV is coming over with his aircraft. You can see Mr. Frodo has popped his defensive fire once already, but it doesn't matter. It's an American light cruiser, top tier. The AA ability on this ship is absolutely top notch. Harbor Ross, not a lot of health left, does get taken out by the Harugumo, who's shooting over the island to hit him. That's actually kind of impressive. You can see there, he is being targeted. He's detected by aircraft. He's being targeted. That's more than likely going to be the Harugumo, briefly targeting him. The question is, where'd the Harugumo go, and is he setting up for a torpedo run? Looking at the situation now, we can see him. The answer is probably not if he's still behind that island. The Harugumo, of course, it's important to note, has 1 torpedo launcher, but it's 6 torpedoes. They do a lot of damage. They're quick, reasonably long-ranged, and with the torpedo reload boost consumable, you can get 2 salvos away. That's 12 torpedoes he can get away in very short order. So you don't want to blindly sail around an island with a Harugumo possibly having that available to him. In the meantime, the friendly carrier has dropped his torpedoes. Aircraft are returning. Because of that, Harugumo no longer detected. But, as we can see, Mr. Frodo, he's got his radar available. Now, the radar on American heavy cruisers is at top tier, I believe about 9.5 kilometers. The detection range, slightly more than that. Actually, here we can see it's at 9.5 kilometers. So right about there, there's the torpedoes I was talking about. Doesn't look like that set's going to hit any, but again, you got to think about this. He might have that second set, so you probably don't want to be sailing blindly around there, and there is that second set. Mr. Frodo pops his radar consumable. He's going to get all of his shots off there. Look how long this radar lasts. It's going to last a long time. This Harugumo's got double trouble, though. He's got a Moskva behind the Wooster, and the Wooster's rate of fire is more than enough to finish him off, and there is the Kraken unleashed for his effort to go with his Confederate that he earned a while ago, and that's when the enemy carrier pops up. Well, him and his divmate take the sea cap point and prevent the enemy team's victory outright. Even if this poor Tier 8 carrier does manage to secure some kills on somebody, his team cannot win. There's simply no way they can recover the points. The points from Dear Mr. Frodo's team will be more than enough. And look at this. Oh my gosh, just so much high explosive. There's a fire. There's a high caliber. There's the base capture assist. And the damage keeps going up. This poor carrier, he's on fire so many places. Who's going to get the kill? Nope, it isn't going to be Mr. Frodo or his divmate there. 190,000 damage done in that game. High caliber, Kraken unleashed, and Confederate. Very, very well done to you, sir. What is surprising here, because 3 base cap assists, 10 aircraft down, look at the number of shots there. Top of the team for XP earned at 3,100 base XP. The next nearest guy on his team was actually in his division, almost half of that at 1,600 base XP. Anyway, that's it for today's video, folks. If you like the video, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. If you'd like to get semi-regular channel news and updates, you can do so by liking and following me on Facebook. If you'd like to watch me play various games live, you can do so by following me on Twitch. If you've got a replay like this one that you'd like to have me take a look at, or otherwise see featured on my channel, you can send it to my email. You can find the links for all of those in the video description down below. And if you'd like to see the cute bird making the cute bird noises in the background of this video, you can do so by seeing the video description down below and following the video link to her YouTube channel. As always, I'll see you next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.